talking today with two people who hope to represent this area in Congress. The Beaverton Democrat Suzanne Bonamici has been a state senator since 2008. She was appointed to that seat after her primary opponent Brad Avakian vacated it to become Labor Commissioner. Bonamici was elected to the State House in 2006. In the 1980s, she worked as an attorney both in private practice and for the Federal Trade Commission in Washington, D.C. The Republican Rob Cornilles lives in Tualatin. 16 years ago, the Oregon native created a company called Game Face. It provides training and consulting for professional and collegiate sports teams. Cornilles also serves on numerous community boards. In case you haven't heard our candidate conversations in the past, this is not a formal debate. We don't have strict time limits or buzzers. We won't solicit opening or closing statements, but I will do my best to ensure equal time for our candidates. And as always, we welcome your input as we go. If you have questions for Suzanne Bonamici and Rob Cornilles, our phone number is 1-888-665-5865. Our website, opb.org/thinkoutloud. Welcome back to the show, Suzanne and Rob.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, David.
So we did a very unscientific eeny, meeny, miny, mo right before the show started. And Suzanne, the first question goes to you, but I'll ask this to both of you. You've been involved in a lot of debates now, and you've both been campaigning because it's sort of scrunched primary and general election season for months now. So we've heard a lot from both of you. But is there something you think about your own position, or in this case, your opponent's position, Rob Cornilles' position, or positions that you think voters have not heard yet?
Well, they certainly have heard a lot, Dave. I appreciate that. And, you know, there's been a lot of attention both in debates and conversations and in endorsements that I have received about my legislative background. But I think what a lot of people don't know is the work that I did before the legislature, both as a community volunteer as an attorney, and even during college and law school when I worked at Legal Aid. So I spent a lot of time working at Legal Aid, helping low-income families who were struggling, and I learned a lot from that experience, and it really sort of charted the course for my career.
What's one specific example of something you did or learned there that you think you would, actually apply to life in Congress?
Well, one of the critical things that I learned from working at Legal Aid, which is, for low-income families, is that families aren't struggling by choice. They're struggling because they've either lost a job, lost a spouse, or had health care bills that they couldn't pay. So I really learned a lot about how families want to get back on their feet, how they want to get back to work, how they want to have access to health care, and policy can affect that. So that's one of the things that really drove me later in life into public policy, is being able to sort of stand up for those families, help them get back on their feet, and have the opportunities that they need and deserve.
Rob Cornilles, what issues or positions, either of yours or of Suzanne Bonamici's, you think voters have not heard yet?
Well, I think that the fact that 21 mayors in this congressional district, which represents about 70% of all mayors, have come forward and endorsed me. And it doesn't matter what party affiliation they have, whether they're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. And one has to wonder, why have they stepped forward and endorsed someone who's coming out of the private sector? And I think it's very simple, because one thing that Suzanne and I have agreed on throughout this campaign is that jobs is the number one priority. It's the number one issue facing our state and certainly our country today. And all of our problems flow from the fact that not enough people are working. And these mayors have collectively decided that between the two of us, I would be a better partner in Washington, working with them on a local level to make sure we create an environment where jobs can be restored to the state, and those jobs we have are maintained in this state.
Let's get briefly both of your versions of how you would attack this area of jobs. Rob, starting with you.
Well, I think there are three main pillars of job creation today. And by the way, this is a very important discussion, not only because it's the number one issue, but because one of us is going to go back to Washington and represent this district. We have to be able to work in a bipartisan fashion in order to be successful generating job growth. And my ideas are bipartisan. They're talked about in Washington, but we don't have leaders willing to put them forward. And here they are. First is we have to simplify and make more predictable our tax code for a whole host of reasons. reasons I'd be happy to talk about. But right now, the tax code is so complex, it's frankly only understood by mega corporations and the mega rich who take advantage of it, and the rest of us pay the bill.
You've talked about eliminating tax loopholes.
Yes, I have.
What's an example of a tax loophole that you would, and you can say right now, you would want to eliminate?
You bet. Well, one example is, the home mortgage deduction was designed to help people get into homes. I don't think we should eliminate that, but I don't think we need it for people's second homes, for vacation homes. I don't think we should be subsidizing the wealthy. I also think that the carried interest deduction, which essentially allows a hedge fund manager who gets compensated largely on bonuses based on the performance of their fund, that compensation right now can be taxed as a capital gains at 15% as opposed to normal compensation, which could be up to 35%.
As opposed to income. Absolutely.
I think that's wrong. I think that's unfair. There's another deduction I find very humorous. It's the fertilizer deduction. And if you'll pardon the pun, I think it's a crappy deduction. I think people are making money off the tax code when they shouldn't be. And General Electric, Verizon, Pepco, these types of companies, they're actually making money off the tax code while small businesses in Oregon are paying the full bill, and that's what's hurting job growth.
How exactly? Draw the line there between these tax loopholes, as you call them, that you'd like to close, and job growth.
Well, if a small business like mine, which I started 16 years ago, as you know, if we don't have an army of lawyers and lobbyists and accountants to help us figure out the tax code, which, by the way, was written by an army of lawyers and lobbyists and accountants, then we can't work through the maze of all of these complex codes and deductions and credits, etc. Then we just naturally don't have the ability to, quote, take advantage of those tax codes, but the mega corporations do. So they always seem to find a way to work through the system. But small businesses don't have the resources to hire those types of people and to comply, and as a result, they pay the full freight. And when you're doing that, you don't have the money in order to invest in equipment, in personnel, in expansion, etc.
Suzanne Bonamici, your plan for jobs.
Thanks, Dave. And I have both a short-term plan and a long-term plan for jobs, including my first step will be to continue some work I started in the legislature, which is getting capital to small businesses. That's something that I worked on in a bipartisan fashion and that we passed in 2010, working with our state economic development department, and then extended last session. And I will be working on that from day one in Congress, for example, with the Credit Union Association, which has endorsed my candidacy. Credit unions can lend more to their members who want to either start a business or who have a business if we can just raise the cap that is on the amount that they can lend. That will immediately get capital to businesses not only in Oregon but across the country. I'll also be working with the Small Business Administration to make them more accessible and make sure that they're serving constituents in the 1st District and across the country. Second, I'll be working on infrastructure. I was up in Columbia County over the weekend. They're extending broadband up there. That's going to make a big difference to, especially in rural areas. And I want to mention that the Small Business Capital Act that I passed in Oregon legislature, more than half of those loans go to small businesses that are in rural areas. So infrastructure projects, rebuilding our roads, our bridges, our electrical grid to support the renewable energy industry, using more work share that we have in Oregon, using existing unemployment dollars to keep people on the job. And those are short-term solutions that are going to help rebuild the economy.
If I could just stop you right there.
Sure.
I want to hear your long-term ones as well, but there's a big difference that's cropped up already between the two of you in terms of your overall approach to jobs. If I can just summarize them, I mean, Suzanne, it seems that you're saying largely it's a problem it starts with access to capital. Rob, you're saying that they may have capital or not, but they're afraid to use it. If you, I mean, do you agree with the other's position in terms of the other problem that your opponent sees? Is this a basic disagreement here?
If I may, Dave, first of all, American companies are sitting on $2 trillion of cash. You have to ask, why are they doing this? It's because of the uncertainty that the political process has created, largely in Congress. Second, allowing capital into the market, especially in small businesses, is exactly what both of us want. We have different approaches. The bill that Suzanne mentions in Salem, in actuality, if you look at it, it didn't create that many jobs. I mean, the largest employer, the largest group of employees that was hired by one company through that bill was 43 people, and It's a company in Coos Bay. It was a $73 million project, and they got $700,000 from this bill that Suzanne refers to. And they claim that that created 43 jobs. And I just don't see how that adds up, how $700,000 would be the impetus for a $73 million project and created 43 jobs.
Suzanne, do you want to respond to that, or more broadly to this question of companies sitting on capital already?
Right. Both. Certainly, if you ask anybody who has a business who got one of those loans, or somebody who's working now because of those loans, they do believe it's important. And it isn't just this capital. It's often partnered with private lenders. So I do believe that that was an important bill, and I also believe that these short-term solutions are exactly what we need. Yes, we need to simplify our tax code, but you know how long that's going to take, Dave. That's not going to help somebody in Columbia County who's going to lose their house next week, or somebody in Yamhill County who needs a job right now. We need short-term solutions and long-term solutions so that we can get people back to work right away.
What are those long-term solutions? Because I interrupted you earlier.
Sure. Well, I also had another short-term solution, and that's making sure that I'm a graduate of a community college. I understand the importance of community colleges and job training. If we are connecting our community colleges with the businesses in the area, we can make sure that our job training is meeting the needs of the businesses in the area. And long-term, improving our system of public education, pre-K through higher education, is going to bolster the workforce. It's also going to make sure...
Improving how?
There's many things we can do, starting with making sure we're not cutting programs like Head Start. Talk about a way to really address the issue of income equality. You make sure that every child, regardless of background, has a good public education. And finally, we need strong, sound consumer protection laws to make sure that we don't have another financial crisis like the one we're digging out of. I read in the paper today that right now, about 1 in every 4 homes in Oregon is underwater. We have to have action to make sure that we can revitalize the housing market. And I'm proud to say that the Association of Realtors has supported my campaign because they know that I'll work on solutions to get our housing market going again.
A lot said there. First of all, regarding the consumer protection, I believe we need to make sure that we have robust laws in this area. This is one of the good things that came out of the Dodd-Frank bill, which was passed a year and a half ago in Congress. However, the downside of that bill has been terrific. In that, it was largely created to make sure that Wall Street and big banks don't put us into the same economic dive that we've gone through in the last 3 or 4 years. However, the challenge with it is that the policies and the regulations that stem from that bill have trickled down to our community banks. And this is all over the 1st District. Our community banks are unable to make the loans that they want to. They're unable to release the capital they want to because the regulators working on Dodd-Frank still aren't finished with it. It's going to be a 10-year process for all those lawyers to figure out what's in that bill. So when you talk about releasing capital, I don't think it's new laws. I think it's going back and paring back that which has already been done. And this is a dire situation for this district and this state. We have community banks, because they, again, don't have the resources that the mega banks have, they are short just a few years away from actually losing their business because they can't comply with all the stack of regulations that's coming out of Washington, D.C.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Think Out Loud on OPB. We're talking with Rob Cornilles and Suzanne Bonamici. They're running in the special election for Oregon's 1st District. Ballots have been going out in the last couple days. You may have already gotten yours if you're a voter in the 1st District. They're due January 31st. You can join us with your questions right now for the candidates if you haven't voted yet. 1-888-665-5865. Our website is opb.org/thinkoutloud. We got this from P. Colas on our site who says, would either of you support a constitutional amendment to undo the U.S. Supreme Court's Citizens United case? Suzanne Bonamici?
Yes. I understand that that's a long-term solution. It's not easy to pass constitutional amendments, but I firmly believe that we need to work toward getting the money out of politics, which is one of the reasons why I earned the endorsement of the Independent Party of Oregon as well. Citizens United is a case that I believe needs to get overturned. This is also one of the reasons why I support President Obama, because I believe that ultimately we need Supreme Court members who will someday overturn that case. But in the meantime, I would support a constitutional amendment to work on getting money out of politics. I would also support increased disclosure of money that's spent, especially with these independent expenditures.
One example of those independent expenditures, the so-called super PACs, is the House Majority PAC that supports Democratic candidates. And there have been some articles recently saying that they're going to be doing a pretty big TV ad buy on behalf of you, or not, well, for you, independent of you, but certainly for you. That's a fact that Rob Cornilles' campaign has been touting recently. Would you consider telling them, no, I don't want you to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on TV ads in support of me. I don't support this law.
Well, you know that we are by law forbidden to coordinate with any independent expenditure organization.
Would you say in general, as a blanket statement, do not do this? I don't believe in super PACs. I don't support the Citizens United case. I don't want anybody putting these ads out in support of me. Instead of, it's not coordinating necessarily with a PAC, but it's saying I don't want anyone to do this.
Well, what I do believe, Dave, is that it's important for people to know the truth about the candidates. So I don't want to get into legal trouble by coordinating by telling them what to do or what not to do.
What about asking them to disclose where the money came from?
No, I'd have to look at whether it's appropriate for me to do that and not violate the law, because I don't know whether that is coordination. So what I do believe is important is that people know the truth about the candidates, and I know that Rob's party's been spending money on mailings about me as well.
Rob Cornilles, first of all, your take on this comment that we got on our site about whether or not you'd support a constitutional amendment to change the law.
I don't see a movement afoot, but if I'm elected and my constituents overwhelmingly want me to push something, then I would certainly consider it. But right now, I don't support a constitutional amendment to overturn this.
Do you support the ruling itself?
Yes, I do. And here's something that's very important for your listeners to know. I'm being just inundated my campaign in this election with negative advertising against me to the tune of approaching $2 million, and I'm not complaining, saying those super PACs should stay out. I recognize that's their right according to the law. I find it very hypocritical that Suzanne doesn't support Citizens United, but she sure likes it when it benefits her campaign by assassinating the character and the reputation of her opponent in an election.
Do you like it when it's helping you in terms of having money that goes towards your side?
No, what I think is important, again, is that people know the truth about who the candidates are and what they stand for.
Can't they know the truth without super PACs? I mean, Suzanne is relying on...
You're saying that you support super PACs.
Oh, I'm talking about the hypocritical nature of her stand on this. I support super PACs. If they want to come in and do what they want to do, that's their prerogative. But if my fellow candidate has been opposed to the law which permits them the right to do so, why isn't she standing up and saying, even though it cannot be coordinated, I grant her that, why isn't she showing the leadership that's necessary, such as what's being done right now in the state of Massachusetts with Elizabeth Warren, the Democrat candidate for Senate, along with the Republican senator, Scott Brown. They've come out together and said, we encourage and are asking super PACs to stay out of our race. Since Suzanne supports Elizabeth Warren and has used her as a role model, why doesn't she take the same type of leadership that Miss Warren is using?
Well, I've already denounced at least one of the ads that was sent on my behalf.
Which ad was that?
Oh, it was an ad that the Democratic Party sent out in a flyer.
That was after she was asked to do so by community newspapers. She didn't do it on her own.
We've got a lot more coming up. We've got to take a quick break. You're listening to Think Out Loud. We're talking with Suzanne Bonamici, a Democrat, and Rob Cornilles, a Republican. They're running for the 1st Congressional District. It's a special election. It is on January 31st. Lots more, including your calls, 1-888-665-5865, opb.org/thinkoutloud.
Support for Think Out Loud is provided in part by the Rosie Tucker Charitable Trust. If you have missed any part of the conversation that we're listening to so far with Suzanne Bonamici and Rob Cornilles, the two most high-profile candidates in Oregon's 1st Congressional District race, you can hear the conversation in full coming up tonight at 9 o'clock with the rebroadcast, or later this morning, get a podcast of today's show at opb.org/thinkoutloud. In news stories we're following today at OPB, the weather is in the news. Snowy, icy, or rainy weather is expected over the next couple of days, and forecasters aren't exactly sure which. Temperatures hovering around freezing on the valley floor. One area could be warmer and see only rain. Another could be cooler and experience snow or ice. Also, some Washington lawmakers are trying to pass a new medical marijuana law that would legalize nonprofit dispensaries. Supporters hope it will clear up the uncertainty that followed Governor Chris Gregoire's partial veto last year of a medical marijuana law. Find details on these stories and others throughout the day on OPB and at our website at opbnews.org. You're tuned to OPB in Portland and Milwaukee at 91.5 FM, in Wheeler and Nehalem at 106.1, and on the web at opb.org.
You're listening to Think Out Loud on OPB. I'm Dave Miller. If you're just joining us, we're talking today with the two top candidates in the special election for Oregon's 1st Congressional District. This is the open seat in northwestern Oregon that was vacated when Congressman David Wu resigned. The Democrat Suzanne Bonamici and the Republican Rob Cornilles are here, and they will take your questions. If you give us a call, 1-888-665-5865, opb.org/thinkoutloud. We got a question, Rob, that was for you, but I'd like to ask both of you this question. What's the most important issue? This is from somebody who signs on as Have to Go on our site. What's the most important issue where you differ from your party? This person adds, this will be the first time I will vote. I'm registered as a non-affiliated voter. So, Rob, first to you, the most important issue where you differ from the GOP.
Well, I think the refusal on my part to sign pledges written by special interests in Washington, D.C. A lot of the news has been made by the No New Taxes pledge written by Grover Norquist. Some have said that if I'm elected, I'll be the only Republican in the House that hasn't signed that pledge. Excuse me. And I think that's a great advantage to our district. It's not because I'm eager to raise taxes. It's because I am eager to serve my constituents, not some special lobbyists back in Washington, D.C., who I don't know and who I don't answer to. I think Congress needs flexibility right now to come together and find common ground. They're not doing that. They're staying in their respective corners, refusing to come out and play, and as a result, we have this gridlock. We have this stalled economy. We have people out of work. And I know in my private business practice, when you have a problem, you put it on the table, everybody gathers around that table, and you discover what the best solution is, and then you execute that solution. You administer it, and everyone enjoys the results and the rewards of that. That's the kind of attitude I have. That's the kind of approach I'll take. I can't do that if I'm handcuffed by special interests.
Suzanne, I want to get your response, but we got a follow-up from Carol, who says every candidate always promises that he or she will act independently, not as a partisan. But in this highly contentious Congress, the truth is that party politics reigns supreme. I'd like to ask the candidates how we can be assured that they really will break from their party when doing so is in Oregon's best interests.
Is that question?
That's for you, yeah. And then Suzanne, I'd love to get your response to both of these. Yeah.
Well, I think Carol and others understand the district that I'm running for. I'm running for a district that is largely Democrat, more than Republican. If I was to go back to Washington, D.C. and be a button pusher for my party or for John Boehner, what would happen in November of this year when
we do this all over again?
Exactly. I wouldn't be reelected. So I cannot afford to be a partisan. I don't want to be a partisan. I haven't done it in my professional or personal life. I wouldn't start it now. I wouldn't be someone who just constantly votes down party line, and there's one person in the race who has a history of doing that. And so I think voters need to understand we have a terrific opportunity.
So you mentioned the not signing the taxes pledge. What else? Is there some other issue where you think that you're not a standard Republican?
I was dismayed last year when many Republicans used Planned Parenthood as a political football. And they were trying to defund Planned Parenthood. I think that's wrong. As we all know, Planned Parenthood, by law, cannot use federal dollars for abortion. They use federal dollars to provide necessary services, contraceptives, and other health services for women who need it. And I oppose that movement, that move by the Republican Party. Not all of them, but some of them. I thought it was theatrical. It wasn't pragmatic. It wasn't practical. I've also said I don't believe in privatizing Social Security or Medicare. Some in my party are advocating that.
Suzanne?
Sure. And the first question from, I believe it was Have to Go, had to do with an important issue where we differed from our own party.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things that I'm going to be working on is ending some of these subsidies to big oil companies that are making record profits, to agriculture companies, and that's something that a lot of Democrats have supported.
Not necessarily. The oil companies seems like that is a straight Democratic line at this point, ending tax breaks to oil companies. I mean, you're not breaking from your party there by suggesting that, I think.
Well, with agriculture subsidies, that's something where we absolutely we have to stand up and say this is not a good use of taxpayer dollars. That is something that I feel very strongly about, and I know that when we're looking at a matter of priorities, first of all, we have to tackle the debt and the deficit, but we have to do that with the priorities that include standing up to lobbyists who have been lobbying for these for years. If we're going to be using agriculture dollars to subsidize farmers, we should be subsidizing small farmers and those where it will really make a difference, especially in this district. And with regard to Carol's question, how will you know? I was interested in hearing Rob talk about how he was going to vote against his party because otherwise he wouldn't get reelected. Now, I've served in office, and I don't make votes based on whether or not I'm going to get reelected. I take votes based on what's best for the district. I look at each piece of policy, and I know the policy is going to be impacting the lives of the constituents in the district, and that's how I make a decision, not based on whether or not I'm going to be reelected. And how will you know how we will act in Congress? You can look at my record, and I know I've been called a partisan, but if I were partisan, I wouldn't have endorsements from Republicans like Dave Frohnmeyer. And the way that I have acted in the state legislature is on the key issues that I've worked on, from helping families in foreclosure to reducing pesticide use in schools to some of the consumer protection work I've done. I brought people around the table, Democrats, Republicans, industry, consumer groups, identify the problem, come up with a solution, and then have that passed in a bipartisan fashion.
Rob Cornilles, I saw you barely holding your tongue when Suzanne just now was talking about her take on when you said that if you vote strictly down the party line, you won't be elected in November, and her understanding is that that's a purely political calculation.
Well, first of all, let me just say regarding the endorsement that you just referenced, her bipartisan endorsements are all from attorneys, so no surprise there.
What does that mean?
Well, she's an attorney. Most of her contributions, when you look at sectors of society, are coming from trial lawyers. So she has huge support from attorneys, and they're basically protecting one another's interests because she is for a lot of regulation, a lot of legislation, and that gives attorneys more work to do. Whereas we need to be looking for the small business owners, for those who create jobs, for those who want to invest and hire. But back to your original question about re-election, I will grant Suzanne and anyone, that's what I said. Let me be specific as to what I mean when I say that. Okay. If I'm an 8-month congressman in Oregon, I'm not going to be very effective for us. Anyone knows that. Therefore, my purpose would be to not only win in January, but also to win in November so that I can continue to move the ball forward and up the field for Oregonians. And I'm going to be in the majority party once elected. Suzanne would not be. And in the majority party, you have the ability to actually drive the agenda, and I'll drive the agenda for Oregonians, not only for this year, but chances are, based on the retirement of so many Democrat congresspeople right now, I'll be in the majority for the next 3-5 years or more.
There was a fascinating snippet of the Willamette Week's interview with both of you that they put online not too long ago. So it's just about 5 minutes. I think we'll put a link up on our site where they're talking to you about the time you both have to spend these days on the phone, making direct calls to people, basically just dialing for dollars, and you both said that you spend about 3 to 4 hours every day on these calls. What's your pitch? Suzanne, when you call somebody up, What's your pitch?
Well, my pitch has to, when I'm fundraising, is that people are ready for a proven leader, someone with my background, and are they interested in helping support my campaign? And a lot of my contributions are from individuals, people who have known me, people who have worked with me, and in response to Rob's story about all of my Republican support being from attorneys, that's just not the case, and especially not attorneys in private practice, which is what he's implying. For example, when I'm talking to people, one of the donors to my campaign is a constituent who came to me when I was in the legislature with a problem. I helped him with the problem. We passed legislation.
Can you tell us what the problem was?
Oh, it had to do with his employer misusing money that was supposed to be going to child support. And, I helped this man. I didn't look at his party affiliation, and he's a Republican.
So you called him up not too long ago, and you said, hey, I helped you. Can you help me out?
No, actually, I didn't call him. He donated without me calling him.
So that wasn't.
But that's just an example of some of my support is coming from people I've helped or people who know me, who know my record, and are interested in having somebody with my record and my values. I have more than 40 small business owners supporting my campaign because they know that the work that I've done in the legislature and the work that I will do in Congress is good for small businesses. So it isn't just my support isn't just from attorneys. It's from a lot of small business people. It's from people who understand that there's a difference between Rob and me. I support the right of women to make their own reproductive health care decisions. Rob is pro-life. So some people want to support me.
What is your pitch when you call somebody up? If you're spending 4 hours, upwards of 4 hours a day these days asking for money, what does it sound like?
Well, first, I just have to say something because I've sat with Suzanne and stood with her many times, and we've had many discussions like this. I haven't said anything, but she continues to suggest through her comment that for some reason I'm anti-woman. Nothing could be further from the truth. My record shows it. My community service shows it. And I find it very, very unsettling to take that accusation from someone who called David Wu a personal friend and defended and campaigned for him for years. Now, getting to your question.
Well, since you brought that up, though, can you just make clear what your position is on abortion?
I personally don't support abortion except in the cases of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. It's a very sensitive issue. It's one that some people in politics like to use as a wedge issue because they think it's a divisive way to go. I think that's unsettling and distasteful, and that's that. And as I said, some people who are making such accusations that I don't stand up for women. I've been very involved in the community when it comes to the child trafficking issue. I've been very involved in shelters protecting women, abused women. I've been very involved in hiring women and helping single moms. I'm on the board of the Virginia Garcia Community Health Center, which largely helps provide health care to women and children. So this notion is quite frankly offensive. Now let's get back to the original question.
Yeah, this question about
open up the kimono.
Yeah, what the pitch sounds like.
Well, first of all, anyone paying attention to this race in this community knows that I'm being outspent at least 4, maybe 5 to 1, because I don't have national organizations coming in and dumping money into this race, and probably because they have confidence in me and my ability to deliver a positive result and a win.
You think that's why the National Republican Congressional Campaign folks haven't put significant money in your race?
I would think so, and I think that you should look at the opposite as well. Why is the Democratic committee coming in to such a great extent? Why is Nancy Pelosi now announcing $200,000 of her PAC money, her super PAC money, coming into this race to essentially assassinate my character? It's because I believe they don't have confidence that my fellow candidate can bring home the win without that kind of assistance.
So what do you tell potential people whom you want to donate?
Well, beyond the disparity that we have a lot of catch up to do, I ask them to consider what balance would do for our congressional delegation. Right now, we have 1 Republican and essentially 6 Democrats serving our state in Congress and the Senate. I don't think that's produced the kind of results we want, as evidenced by, as Suzanne mentioned, the foreclosure rate in our state. It's terribly high. The unemployment rate continues to be above the national average for 15 straight years. Poverty, child hunger, our schools aren't producing the outcomes we need. So obviously, it stands to reason that we need new leadership. We don't need just another policy wonk. We need someone who's actually going to be a leader. And in the majority party in the House, I can take a leadership role. Because even as a freshman, people will know who I am since this is the only election going on in the country.
Do you support SOPA? This is the Stop Online Privacy Act, and PIPA, that's the Protect Intellectual Property Act, which Wikipedia and other sites are going to be going dark tomorrow, closing themselves down tomorrow in protest of.
I just heard that report this morning on OPB. No, I do not support them in their current form. I support the notion of protecting intellectual property. In my business, that's largely what we have is IP. And I think it's a well-intentioned bill, but I do not believe we should put the authority into the Department of Justice to almost randomly censor legitimate websites. Instead, I support Senator Ron Wyden and Congressman Darrell Issa, a Democrat and a Republican, who've come together, who have said, we understand the concern. SOPA is not the right answer. Let's ratchet it back a little bit. Let's take a little bit more thoughtful care in how we create this legislation, and I think we'll come to a better solution along the way.
Suzanne?
And here's an issue where I agree with Rob. I'm also extremely concerned about SOPA and PIPA, and especially with the districts, districts' high-tech businesses, we need to make sure that we're protecting intellectual property. However, those bills go too far, and I will be working with and looking at the bipartisan bill that Senator Wyden and Congressman Issa have, along with Senator Cantwell, to make sure that we're getting the right approach to this issue. And, I want to just also address the issue of, Rob was talking about rising foreclosure. Just yesterday morning, I was at the MLK breakfast, and a woman came up to me I didn't know, and she said, I need to talk to you, and I hope I can do this without too many tears in my eyes. She looked at me and said, you helped me save my home. She contacted my legislative office, and I worked on her behalf. She wasn't a constituent, but because of my involvement, and expertise in this area, she said that she didn't even know how to thank me without crying, that meant so much to me that I helped her save her home. Now, that's the kind of leadership that we need. We need somebody who has experience, looking out for constituents, standing up for constituents.
If I could just follow up on that, though, I mean, it sounds like a very touching moment, but how does that translate to what you would do in Congress?
What I would do in Congress is look at federal policy that will help revitalize our housing market, and that will make sure that we have the strong consumer protection laws so that we don't have another financial crisis like the one we're getting out of now. And I have a lot of
how would you revitalize the housing market? This is something that the president and both parties have tried to do with mixed results, I think, at best, for the last couple of years.
Right. And frankly, the proposals, the loan modification programs weren't strong enough. They didn't go far enough. And I know that there's currently a bill that I believe Senator Merkley is working on that will involve taking a lot of the foreclosed properties and making them rentals, so that housing is a fundamental issue. And if we can be avoiding the blight that happens in neighborhoods when we have too much foreclosed property, and providing housing and transitioning people and preventable foreclosures, we're going to be a lot better off.
The answer is putting people back to work. And I appreciate the story that Suzanne just shared with us about the woman yesterday. I understand it because I've had similar stories as a business owner. One of the things I've been able to do is not only employ 60 people within the 16 years we've been in business, but I've been able to help about 500 people actually launch careers in their chosen field. And one story in particular that means a lot to me is a woman who lived in Houston who came to Portland to receive training and guidance from our firm because nobody in her market would take her resume, let alone take a phone call from her. Today, she's one of the leading female executives in the sports industry based in Houston. And it's because of the type of work that we do, giving people more skills, more opportunity, opening doors for them, and not just opening the door and saying, here, have an interview, but opening the door and saying, here are the skills, once that door is open, that will make you stand apart from others. This is why education is so important to me. This This is why post-college training is so important to me. And when it comes to the housing market, if people are working, they're able to pay their bills. They're able to pay their rent or their mortgage. It all comes back to that issue.
We've got to take a quick break. We've got more coming up, including conversations about timber and foreign policy. Also, I should mention that the video, the Willamette Week video that I mentioned, is on our Facebook page. You can check that out. Think Out Loud OPB. That's our Facebook page. We'll be right back with Suzanne Bonamici and Rob Cornilles.
Support for Think Out Loud is provided in part by the Jackson Foundation and Steve and Marilyn Kerman. If you have missed any part of this morning's program, or if you would like to hear it again, tune in tonight at 9 o'clock when we'll have the rebroadcast, or you can get a podcast of today's show, or any show, at opb.org/thinkoutloud. In news stories that we're following at OPB today, Pete Seda is due to report to prison next week to begin serving nearly 3 years for money laundering and tax evasion convictions related to an Islamic charity that once operated in Ashland. The Medford Mail Tribune reports his lawyers have asked a federal appeals court to allow him to remain free on bail while he appeals those convictions. They say he has a spotless record wearing an electronic GPS bracelet. Also, the Hanford Nuclear Reservation's tank farms in southeast Washington may have much more plutonium than earlier estimated. That's according to a report by a Hanford contractor that has just been leaked to public radio. At least one high-level Hanford official worries the findings could mean a massive waste treatment plant's design might need to be altered. Find details on these stories and others throughout the day on OPB and at our website at opbnews.org. You're tuned to OPB in Portland and in Westland at 91.5 FM, in the Dalles at 89.7, and online at opb.org.
You're listening to Think Out Loud on OPB. I'm Dave Miller. We're devoting the hour today to a conversation with Rob Cornilles and Suzanne Bonamici. They're the Republican and the Democrat running in the special election for the 1st Congressional District. Our number, 1-888-665-5865. Our website is opb.org/thinkoutloud. Rob, starting with you for this question, President Obama was criticized from the left, from people like Dennis Kucinich, and from the right, from Speaker John Boehner, among others, for not getting congressional approval for military intervention in Libya. That went on for over 6 months. Did you support U.S. military action there?
Well, I think we've learned a lot from Iraq and from Afghanistan, that there needs to be more collaboration with Congress when you're going to take such decisive action in the world. So, no, I did not support that. I think that one of the things that I've learned from the last 10 years, just watching from the sidelines, is that we not only need a good entrance strategy, but you also have to have good exit strategy as well. So clearly define what's the mission, what tools or resources do we have at our disposal so that our men and women can be safe and accomplish that mission, and then once it's accomplished, how do we get out?
In this case, the tools seem to be a ton of drones, and the mission apparently was somehow get rid of Gaddafi. They did succeed in that mission. Given that, I mean, do you support the use of force without congressional approval in this case?
Well, again, as I said, in this case, I did not.
But why not?
Because we didn't know. We don't know, first of all, what we're leaving behind when that kind of a mission is accomplished. No one really knows who's running Libya today, and I think that's a dangerous situation. So I think it was somewhat precipitous to go in the way we did, and I would hope that our administration, I would hope that Congress would have learned from the last 10 years that there needs to be a more unified effort and agreement as to how we're going to enter foreign conflicts.
Suzanne Bonamici?
Well, I do support congressional involvement in military decisions, and that's because of the accountability that in the significance of those types of decisions. And we need to have a Congress that's accountable when these very serious decisions are made. That being said, I support the president. I am concerned about the taking of military action without congressional approval.
Do you support the timber trust plan that was put forward recently by Representatives Walden, DeFazio, and Schrader?
Well, it's a proposal that's put forward. I'm very interested in it. The details have not been fleshed out yet. I look forward to working with them on that because we absolutely need to continue the timber payments until the economy is rebuilt in the counties that are dependent on them. And as someone who sat in committees listening to testimony testimony about what's going to happen if counties go bankrupt in this state. There are no answers to that. It's a very difficult solution. Our service is then turned back over to the state. I understand the importance of making sure that we revitalize the economy in the rural communities, as well as continue the timber payments until that's done. In the timber policy that they're talking about, we do need new forest policy, because right now we have too many acres of land that are going without the maintenance that they need. There are fire hazards. There's potential for biomass. So there's a lot of potential in that policy. But I wanted to mention the timber payments as well.
Right, because obviously this is this trust plan would be as a replacement for timber payments, which they've been threatened to be taken away for
Right.
many years now. What would as you said, it's not a fully fleshed out plan yet, but it's certainly there are the rudiments of it are on the table. What
Right,
would you be
right.
looking for in terms of a plan you could support if the big dynamic is fear on the environmental side that somehow cutting would be clear cutting, and on the other side that not enough money would be going back to counties?
Well, thanks, Dave. It's finding that right balance to make sure that we have a policy that leads to healthy forest, that protects the habitat and the old growth, and make sure that we're doing the work that we need to do to clear the forest in a way that will prevent fires, but that maintains the old growth timber and conservation areas. And I think they're really on the right track with this. But again, it's going to be in the details of finding that right balance.
Rob Cornilles?
Well, once again, we have an opportunity as a delegation to look at a bipartisan plan put forth by the congressman that you just mentioned, and I support that. I applaud that. Suzanne has been called by the Oregonian excruciatingly cautious. I think this is evidence of that. Here's an opportunity for us to embrace this bipartisan plan to help our rural counties, which in effect helps the entire state, because as they go, so goes our state. For 30 years now, our rural counties have largely been pushed out of the woods. They've been told they can't go there anymore. Not entirely, but that's the slow, gradual edict that's been coming out of Washington, D.C. And so we're not managing our forests responsibly. We're not preventing infestation. We are allowing the greater chance of forest fires, etc. I have total confidence in Oregonians who work with our natural resources to care for those natural resources, to better utilize them, to use science to make sure that we preserve them for future generations as well. I don't believe that the path that we've been on for the last 30 years has been good for our state. It hasn't been good for our forests and our habitat. And so, once again, when our delegation says they want to work together, I'm going to be right there at the table helping them along.
We have a very blunt and an unhappy comment on our site from Dave Nelson, who says, "Wow, I don't know who started this negative accusatory dynamic, but along with the typical empty generalities they've each made, these two sound exactly like the kind of folk we don't want representing us." How do you guys respond to this? I guess this gets to the tone of the campaign.
Sure.
Suzanne?
Well, Dave, thanks for the comment, and I'm sorry if that's the way you feel. Let me just say that every time that I've run for office in the past, I've run positive campaigns. I ran a positive campaign during the primary, talking about my priorities, who I am, my background, standing up for working families, seniors, consumers, small businesses, and that's what I had planned to do. But the day after the primary was over, Rob made an attack against me that the Oregonian found to be false. So I have to respond to that kind of thing. But frankly, I agree that the voters would rather be talking about the issues, would rather be talking about who we are, what we stand for, and what we'll do for our communities.
We are talking about the issues. The so-called attack that Suzanne's referring to was my statement that she supports taking $500 billion away from Medicare. I don't support that. It would largely affect those seniors who are on Medicare Advantage, which is about 250,000 Oregon seniors. They've chosen that option. I want to maintain they have that choice. She does not. As far as Dave's comment, Dave, I'm sorry you feel that way. We'd always welcome you to come on in. You know, the water's fine. Join join the political process like I have done. I got tired of listening to candidates make promises they couldn't keep or just not keep the promises that they could keep. So I decided to get involved in the process.
You would be, if one of you wins, you'd be the most junior member in a body of 435 Congress people. What would your metric of success be? If after a year, how would you be able to go back to your district and say, you know what, or go back to your home and say, I actually did do something, I succeeded?
Sure. Well,
whoever wants to go first.
I'm happy to answer that. I would look at legislation that I sponsored, legislation that I passed, and talk to the constituents across a district, just as I have been doing since this campaign began, going around the district, talking to people about what type of leadership they're looking for, what I'll do to create jobs, and that's how I will assess the success as a legislator. I've been recognized for not only my effectiveness, but my integrity as a legislator. That's something I'm really proud of, and that's something we desperately need in Congress. So ultimately, it will be whether what I do in Congress is helping our constituents, our small businesses, our consumers, our seniors, and our working families, making sure that their lives are thriving.
The number one issue, again, is jobs. In a year, voters should ask, has electing Rob Cornilles helped us improve the job situation in Oregon?
But how will they know that you were responsible for that?
Because they will know that the people in the 1st District have a greater sense of confidence that our economy is moving forward, that businesses in this district, which employ thousands and hundreds of thousands, these businesses have greater confidence to grow, to expand, to risk, to take it, to invest. And they have greater markets to sell their products and services to. This is what I've done professionally throughout my life. This is what I want to do in Congress because I think that my background ideally is suited for what we need most in this congressional seat. We need an advocate and a champion to drive commerce, to drive our products and services forward, and that creates jobs.
About 20 seconds each of you to answer this question. If you were to win, your life as you know it would be, I was going to say over, but certainly changed amazingly. What would you miss most about your life right now? Rob?
About my private life?
About your life as a non-congressman?
I would certainly miss the work that I've been able to do around the country in an industry and the number of jobs that I've been able to directly impact through our business and the people I've been able to employ.
I might miss more close contact with the family here in Oregon. My kids are grown, but certainly my husband and my dog. But I plan to be back as much as possible, spending time in the district, meeting with constituents.
Suzanne Bonamici and Rob Cornilles, thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow on the show, it's the last in our series of conversations with